Alrighty. We live. We live. How's everyone's night going? I'm not so happy because I just lost in fantasy. I just lost in fantasy football for the third week in a row on Monday Night Football. So I'm not all that happy right now, but we always got the weather, which is nice to have. Yeah, we own three. We own three. And we've lost by single digits on Monday Night Football every week. Luckily, it's not a life or death for me, but it does affect my mood a little bit for the couple hours after that, and then whenever I think about it after. All right, looks like we got enough people in here. Let's get cooking. Let's get cooking. All right. So we're gonna break down everything, pretty much everything, just like we did last night on stream. We're gonna talk about what's been happening today. We're gonna be talking about what's gonna be happening probably tonight, which is Landfall in Cuba. And then we're going to talk about some of the model stuff, potential tracks down the line, potentially some actual impacts now in terms of like storm surge, um, intensity at landfall, when landfall happens, because that can still change depending on how far up the coast it slides. So there's still quite a few variables that we have to figure out with this one. But we are getting a pretty clear picture in terms of intensity for this thing, of how strong it's probably going to get. It's probably going to be at least a category 4. Could approach category 5 status. Will have a pretty favorable environment over the next couple of days to do so. So I can't rule it out, but it'll probably reach at least category 4 status. And then from there, we have to figure out the upper level pattern, how that defines the track for this storm. That's going to be key. 500 millibar, that trough. We're gonna look into that too. That's going to be important. And again, you got questions, drop them in the chat. I'll try to get to them as soon as I can. I want to break down as much as I can too, but I do want to answer whatever questions you guys do have. And maybe you don't have questions, you're just here to listen. But yep. So let's do it. So all week we've been tracking this storm. All week. And give me 1 second. One second. All right, here we go. So we're looking at landfall in Cuba later tonight. Over the day, we've seen this thing take off in terms of intensity. It's been in terms of those convective bursts, those have been fluctuating some. So, you'll see a few convective bursts rotate around the center, and then it kind of, we see it kind of taper off, and then we see more CV bursts take off around the inner core as well. And now we've gotten to the point where we've got a visible eye on satellite, which you can see right here pretty visibly. I'll circle it for you. Right here, we have a pretty visible eye now on satellites, which has been warming. And we look for the eye to warm, because when the eye warms, that means this thing can take off in terms of intensity. We see bigger pressure falls, etc. And when we see these pressure drops, then the winds start to catch up. Winds have been trying to catch up to the pressure for pretty much the last day or so. We see pressure drops and the winds catch up after. Sometimes they're simultaneous, other times not. So with these big pressure drops, we've been seeing all the way down to, the low 960s, and we even it actually increased a couple millibars in the last pass. So that's interesting, but it's pretty clear that probably going to make landfall as a borderline major hurricane, if not major hurricane, in Cuba tonight. And then, see, it's probably moving this direction right now, somewhere around there, northwest, and it has some terrain it will have to go over. Elevation wise. So it's gonna have to work over a little bit of some mountainous terrain, not like mountain ranges, but like a little bit of hilly terrain it will have to work its way over, and that could mess with it a little bit. But it's moving fast enough at 10 to 15 miles per hour, more like 12 to 15 miles per hour, that it should be able to get off on and off the island within, like 3 to 5 hours. Yeah, about that. And then once it gets back into the Gulf of Mexico, then that's when we're going to likely see intensification take off again. So it's going to work its way into the Gulf, and then we're going to look, for something like this. That's what we're looking at. And maybe not quite as sharp, but you get the gist. And then once it works its way back into the Gulf, well, I mean, deep ocean heat content certainly there, right north of Cuba. Those sea surface temperatures too are very warm. You get those 30 degree sea surface temperatures, almost near 31 by the Keys. And this is going to be very supportive of intensification. We combine that with the low wind shear environment that it's currently working. If I show you its current environment, let's get right here. That is a little bit down the road. Boom, 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 boom. Here we go. You can see it's got a good outflow. It's a good outflow currently. Maybe a little bit of wind shear currently from the northwest, because that trough is digging down, is working against it some. Sorry about that. But again, the outflow is very supportive. Low wind shear environment, and shear will increase. Shear will increase over the next couple of days. Probably when it gets close to landfall. Probably intensifies. So here's the thing. The more this trough sits back, we're going to get into this right away. We'll just get right into the track. I'm sorry, mine got lost. We can see this is what we've been talking about these streams here is we got this trough very visible, very visible. Now the difference between the GFS and the Euro is exactly this. You can see the GFS is a little bit more with the depth of the trough, and it's a little bit more positively tilted as well. It's not as different as it was. I will say it's not as different, but the Euro is a little bit slower. GFS wants to get us out, but this makes me think it's going to pull it. That's more east from last turn. It has to be. Yep. Yeah. And so what we're looking at is, when this was so far out in front, it never gave a chance to even possibly have some sort of stream interaction with this trough. And so it's just shearing it. But if the outflow, if the shear from this trough is less working this way and a little bit more this way, then it can help the outflow a little bit more of this system and not completely shear off. It makes a little bit of a difference to be a little bit more supportive in the outflow, because the outflow is important. Remember, we talked about low level center, mid level center, and then once we get up here, we get to our outflow, and the center of the storm works out like this. And if the outflow, if it gets sheared apart at the top, the outflow is not going to be as supportive for intensification. Which is why we saw, even though the GFS was strengthening the storm more, once the time it got into landfall, had no shot to keep it, hold on to its intensity. And what we're seeing with the Euro, and why it's been leaning east with a lot of these scenarios, is the trough pulls it in a little bit more. There's a little bit more connection. It's not quite a stream interaction per se, but there is a little bit more connection with this trough. And even has a little bit of a stream interaction. You can see here the tail end of the trough gets caught up into here. And I'd be curious what the rest of this run would look like. I would be curious to see what that would have looked like, but 18Z only goes out this far for a reason. But everybody was talking about the 18Z run because it slowed down and stalled everything. I don't know if we're going to see this much of a stall. But the point that we're looking at here is this trough holds. The more this trough holds back, it's probably going to pull this farther east sooner, and we're probably going to get a slightly farther south landfall. That also combined with the fact that when this trough pulls back, there's probably going to be a better chance for some sort of stream interaction. So the more this trough digs down, the more this is going to be able to pull in. No, redraw it. Let me redraw it. One second. You see, so the more this pulls back, better chance we get for a stream interaction. So this pulls back even more. Let me I have to redraw it even again. This pulls back even. It's probably not going to pull back that far. But I'm just showing you, for example, the better chance that this gets pulled slider east, and as the trough pulls out and starts to head a little bit more towards neutral tilted, then it starts to get pulled in more. And that's why we saw those scenarios where it gets slingshotted up the coast. And this is a more impactful scenario, which is why it has to be watched. Impacts more people, or it just even like something like this where it gets slingshotted up here into the Carolinas, because this is a much more impactful scenario. It gives a chance for it to re-intensify possibly, and who knows? Who knows? So now we will slide. We'll take a look again at satellite. All right. So it looks like the western eye wall is probably pretty strong. On this side, it looks like the western eye wall is pretty strong right here. And that actually adds up with radar. You can see here on radar. Is that just because of the GFS run? I mean, I've been saying, I've been talking about this the whole time. We talked about those scenarios. We talked about even last night. It said if what I just went over, what I literally just went over, if we see that trough pull down more, we talked about the influence and more of an interaction. We talked about what kind of impact that will have. GFS a little bit closer to the euro, but this is interesting. Even develops into a strong upper level low and moves northwest inland. That is an interesting scenario. I don't know if we'll actually see something like that. GFS that's an interesting kind of interaction. It's basically like two cutoff lows at the same time. That is very interesting. Looks like the edge of the boundary, some sort of interaction. That's an interesting run. There's a lot of specific variables on this run for that to happen. Like this little piece of energy out here. Looks like this kind of kicks into the system a little bit, and this boundary here all play a part. The depth of this trough, the way it allows the movement of this storm to happen. There's a lot of different variables just at 500 millibars, just at the upper air pattern. So I don't know. I want to take this with a huge grain of salt. Other than like the location of where it approaches landfall, that's all I would. That's all I would look at for now. In terms of the GFS, I would. In terms of what it does after landfall, I think there's still a few more details. We are pretty close. A few days away. 3-4 days away from that after landfall period. But there's still some details that need to be fine tuned, as you can see. When we talk about it, the GFS, if we play from last run, I'm going to guess it's going to have that trough dig a little bit deeper. A little bit slower with the evolution. A little less positively tilted. You can see here, look at this piece. I can tell this is a little bit less positively tilted, still positive, but a little bit less. Notice here, right, the way it's tilted like this. And then if I play the next from 18Z to 0Z, notice if it's less curved, and it's a little bit straighter. It may look negligible, but that is a difference right there. Go from here to here. That's just like, that's parallel. Ooh, Mac is getting angry. But right there, you can see the difference in the depth of the trough, or the tilt in the trough. I'm curious. There's a northern. See, originally it's just a weak broad trough, and it's this what's providing the severe weather for the Northeast over the past couple of days. So that was last night's. Boom, gets injected in this. You can see this piece of energy slingshots right down into this trough. It helps strengthen it. Boom, watch it slingshot right in, and that helps the trough strengthen. And maybe it's struggling to pick up on that piece. Not a lot of notice. Oh, that's just 0 hours. We're not going to be able to see anything there. And it looks like just preserving a little bit more of the energy. So this it's close. It's close out. It was like a day and a half. But how many times have we been a day and a half out from a snowstorm when you've seen a lot of crap change before? Like 50, 100, 50, 75 mile differences a day and a half out, maybe even more. And sometimes these 50, 75 mile an hour differences can play a big part. And then when we go even farther out, what do we look like 2 days from now? How much more stream interaction are we getting? It's going to be pretty hard to see like some of those old Euro runs we saw where it like slingshotted all the way up the coast. I think that may be a little bit hard to see. I wouldn't rule it completely off the table, but it would take a little bit of craziness. Like I said over the past couple streams, it would take a little bit of craziness for that to happen. Interesting run, though. Interesting run for sure. Remember, I told you, always checking satellite. Always checking it. Eye warming again? Looks like eyes warming a little bit again. Take a look at radar. Yeah, it looks like the eye wall opened up a little bit, and now it looks like it's closing off again. So is Recon getting back in there? When's Recon getting back in there? I mean, it's hard. All storm long, they've been finding the flight level to be not that far off from the SMFR readings. I mean, I wouldn't say all storm long but majority of the storm, I think there was one point where the SMFR winds were a little bit behind, but I think that was just the winds catching up, so the pressure drops a little bit. But now you can see flight level winds around maybe 97, 98-ish knots, just above 95 knots, or even here, maybe 100 knots, some of these flight level winds. But then we can also see some of these SMFR readings around 95 knots, it looks like. I mean, we can go into the data file. Believe it or not, you can actually get the exact numbers. If you draw in all these look confusing, but if we go in, we can get all these numbers. know, if you just join it, it just looks like I'm hacking something, but these are just the numbers from recon that they recover. 96, looks like 96 knots. Looks like 96 knots. So that could support 110 mile per hour upgrade. What we might see is you might see the pressure at the 2 a.m. advisory, unless the strengthening period just cancels that out. But it looks like they have enough support at the 2 a.m. advisory that they could go 110 miles per hour. They could do that. Very possible. And I know we got some YouTube people watching too, so looks like no comments yet from the YouTube. They like to come in a little bit later, unless I've missed them. I don't think I have. Right? Yeah. We're all good. All right, we can talk about impacts. Let's do it. National. We can open up some of the National Hurricane Center graphics. That's what I think I'm gonna do. So here's the storm surge. This is an experimental graphic, but it says experimental, but they've been using it. They've been using it for a while. And in here they're saying peak surge is 5 to 10 feet. I can't confirm whether or not it's going to happen. And here's the issue. We can talk about some of this stuff, but at the same time, there's different scenarios that lead to different outcomes with these very specific impacts. So when I show you this, know that this isn't exactly what's going to happen. This is just based on the forecast they have now. So I'm just using it as for reference. And a stronger storm can increase these potential totals. So Tampa Bay is very susceptible to storm surge because they're very low, very, very low in terms of the sea elevation. Like the ocean depth in this part into the bay is really shallow. So storm surge water can get pushed really easily inland, and that's a problem. Tampa has gone so long. Tampa's gone so long now without getting a hit. I mean, it's been like over 100 years, I think, since they've had a direct hit from a really significant hurricane. But these can change, so I wouldn't take these for granted. I would not take these for granted. I don't think I used the right terminology, but you know what I mean. I want to take these verbatim. The verbatim was, I think, what I wanted to use. I want to take these verbatim. I said for granted. Don't take these verbatim. Don't take these numbers for exactly what they are now, because this could change depending on strength. Like if they're forecasting 140, but let's just say it gets to like 175 miles per hour. It peaks at I'm just trying to use an example. This gets to 175 instead of 140, and then makes a landfall farther south. Like, no, that's not going to be the right color, is it? And it makes a landfall farther south, let's just say, for example, instead of like the forecasted, which is like somewhere, I don't know. It's like somewhere around here-ish. I think they have it right now. Let's say it makes farther south. That means these numbers are not only going to be higher, but also it's going to be a different spot for where the storm surge occurs. But in general, the water along the coast is very shallow, the ocean depth. And this is, and just in general across the Gulf Coast, much of the Gulf Coast, and that's why they're so susceptible to storm surge. So the angle of the storm, the way it comes in, can be pretty critical. So if we were to see a scenario where I'm not leaning, this is not my initial. My initial is that it's probably going to work its way, slow down a little bit, and then work its way back either into the ocean or up the coast, something. That's my initial gut with this one. Kind of has been a lot of storm. Wasn't really into all this stuff, even though we saw the model run posts, etc. We saw all those people, in the time that they've talked about that western shift. It's exactly where it was 3 days ago. So all the time they spent to talk about that in impacts here, it's just back where it was. When you get caught in just talking about all those model run shifts, that's what can happen. If I'm being blunt. But I also took into account that the GFS struggles significantly with strengths and depths of troughs, especially big troughs, tends to have a little bit of a progressive bias, and a lot of the tropical people don't usually take that into account. So here's the advantage of me being kind of a winter guy as well, is a lot of the upper air stuff that affects the steering. I can kind of use that for the tropical stuff, and that's kind of my advantage with this stuff. It's not really like the mesoscale features inside of the storm. There's a lot of other people that are good for that stuff too. Those specific details in general, that's not really my strong suit. Even though I know some of those stuff and I've learned some of those stuff, that's not really exactly my strong suit. I'm good at some of those stuff, some of those like small like meso features and that are part of the storm, just because I picked them up. But some of the tropical people can not use 500 mil. Like they just look at like when they look at 500 millibars, they look at like the height anomaly charts and they look at where the high pressure and low pressure troughs are set up. But 500 vort is honestly, it's just as valuable, if not, I'd argue more valuable. I'd say more valuable than just those height anomaly charts. We looked at 500 volt earlier. This is 500 volt. And this is what we use in the wintertime exclusively. You'll see this more than the P-type maps. I mean, how many I've showed this more than the P-type maps for the tropical systems already. But yeah, so the stalling, so it can prolong the rainfall. I mean, we can look at that map they have for rainfall. Could be a big story. And the problem with the rainfall is, don't ask me, is it going to rain like 9 inches like right here? I don't know. I don't know. This is really like Puerto Rico was forecast like 8 to 10 inches, like a day and a half before the storm, and they ended up with like over 2 feet in some places, and like a consistent like 12 to 20 inches across the island. And then 8 to 10 was like the max. Like I think like a foot was like their max totals, and like a small part of the island, and like the whole island on average saw a foot. So like rainfall is like, it's complicated, especially when we're still nailing down some of these details. It's complicated in terms of where exactly it sets up. I think we have a pretty good idea in terms of there could be some big snow, there could be some big rain totals. We could see some spots get over 2 feet of rain. It's possible, I think, in that flooding is going to be a huge concern here. It's not a quick moving storm. It's not a fast mover. It's not in and out. This was going to stay around for a few days, meander, a couple days at least. And in meander, we're already seeing rainfall already out ahead of this. And with that trough as well, it's going to happen. And we even talked about this last night. I just didn't go too far into it. And someone else brought it up again, and I was like, oh yeah, we talked about that last night a little bit. Is we take a look here. Notice, right? We have the front. This is our boundary right here, associated with that. With that trough. And notice how all of this is kind of stretched out, this moisture. So as the storm moves north, which it's going to do at some point, after it heads east, at least northeast. Notice how some of this moisture at that point, the same boundary is still there, but this kind of slides up and along the coast now. So now we're worrying about these big time rainfall totals for not just Florida, but for southeast Georgia, for eastern South Carolina, and potentially even southeastern North Carolina as well. That could be a concern. Some training rain bands could well after the storm has made landfall, or even maybe back over the Atlantic, that we see some training rain bands set up with tropical moisture embedded in them. And that's where we could see some really big rainfall totals as well. So not only are we worrying about big time flooding impacts, with this part of Florida, which is almost all of Florida, but we also have to worry about big time flooding impacts potentially for this region too. Could be some significant flooding. Just putting some thoughts together, it wouldn't shock me, if some places end up with, double-digit rain totals. I said snow once. And I've been trying to say it ever since. Double-digit rainfall totals. Typically, when you say double-digit, snow, not rain. But yeah, double-digit rainfall totals could be possible, in this area. Even more, maybe over a foot, some isolated spots. Got any questions? YouTube? Twitter streaming is not working. Well, it seems to be working for people. But glad you're watching. Glad I can be of help. Or if just maybe like the sound of my voice, maybe. I don't know. What was that last? I'm curious what the last pass was. We have Air Force Hurricane Hunters in there right now. 964. So increased 2 millibars in pressure, but it's at 964. So I'm assuming it's a little bit of wobble to the northwest here too. This is more north. This is northwest, but this is just due northwest. I'm curious. Do we have another aircraft recon heading in soon? Hopefully. None on the schedule, which stinks. We want as much recon as we can get. Obviously they need some sort of rest, but we like as much as we can get. Because the eye is warming right now too. You can see it on satellite. It's got a pretty strong western eye wall, but it seems like the eye wall, if we look at radar. Take a look here at the Cuban radar. Eye wall trying to, if not closed off, really small eye. Again, as I mentioned, you can see on satellite too, those strong western eye wall. But after it opened up a little bit, increased pressure, a couple millibars, looks like it's probably, if I had to guess, it's probably dropping again. Sends it off then, sends off that tropical moisture to the northeast on this GFS run. That would be a lot of rain. That would be some intense rain. But I don't know if this is going to happen like this. I think the GFS is still got some things to fix. Because then you can see it starts to become a little bit more disconnected from this trough here, and starts to kind of go rogue on its own. But it's still got all this dry air back here, working its way into the core, weakening it / landfall. Well, hey, as long as you're prepared and you have the supplies you need, this could be a pretty exceptional storm. And if potentially if the trends in the models go where I think they may, you potentially could just get more wind impact and rain impact than storm surge, if you're lucky. Something about this tells me that this trough is going to want to pull even deeper and try to pull in a little bit more than what models have. And if that were the case, we talked about it earlier, we would potentially see one of these southern solutions. And I'm starting to lean towards the southern border of where the cone is for the National Hurricane Center. I mean, I guess I can just use this here. You can use Southeast Florida. More and more curious. Oh, they're done. No recon. No more recon until the 5 a.m. advisory, potentially. Good news is it's getting even closer to Florida, so a lot of the Lakeland flights will be able to get some of those from the NOAA hurricane hunters. And I forget where is Lakeland Air Force. I forget where, but we're getting closer to the U.S. So the good news, some of the only good news about the storm getting closer to the U.S. is we'll be able to get more hurricane hunters in there on the bright side. More frequently, we can get more data, which will be used to help research for future storms, etc., etc. The whole spiel, kind of. I think it's important. It's important. I kind of just undermined it right there a little bit by saying the whole spiel, but it's important. It is very important, the data they get. It's used to put in our models, which help us with our forecasts, which are very important. The models are very important for us to make the forecasts, and we need those hurricane hunters in there as much as they can. I guess we can look at next too. We can look at the HWRF. Fairly curious. Doesn't look like a lot of dry air trying to work into this system. You can see there was. Not much anymore. Seems like it's initialized pretty well. And it's got it strengthening. So it looks like it's going to strengthen into landfall. Make landfall. We're getting the 0Z loading right now. Looks like HWRF thinks that's going to take. See, this isn't too uncommon. I think so. A lot more people left the stream sooner this time, so it's not popping quite like it was last night. But I'm still grateful for everybody that is in here. It means a lot that you care enough to want to listen to what I have to say. But yeah, I'll probably stay up for some of the Euro. Even if I'm not streaming it, I'll probably maybe even tweet about it or something. A little less people on YouTube tonight. I'm curious. I look for some people who got insight too on Twitter. It's important. 961. Hold up, it's strengthening. Ooh. Who got into the center? $961. Who got the 961? Who got that? No. Whoa. I'm very curious. Who found the 961? Last recon from Mission 18 was 964. The plot thickens. Mission 18, 356. So this was 11. Oh, this was okay. That was a little bit ago. Yeah, we are starting to get in range for radar too, so that will be helpful. I'm trying to see if anybody's got some good insight. Let's see, Eric's always got some stuff. Nope, just football. Hasn't tweeted about anything tonight. That's okay. He tweets plenty enough, so he's getting some rest. Oh boy. Oh, that ring around the center. That is what interests me. Matter of fact, probably not a live tweet. We'll probably do it from the iPad. But you can see the eye is clearly warming. The eye is warming on satellite very visibly. And you can see that ring of convection around the north side of the eye. My guess is it's trying to get below, it's trying to get sub 960 again, if that was my guess. If we see some real rapid satellite improvements over the next hour or so, National Hurricane Center could have a chance to upgrade it to major hurricane status. Because right now they have close to enough for they have close to enough currently for a 110. They could make a case for a 110. And I think they may. It will be at probably at least 110 for the next advisory. But I'm curious if they have enough they think they can go with to make it 115. It's getting going though. It's getting going. These bad boys are getting going. I mean, we can see here a little bit more visibly here. Just kind of and we want to look for a centralized CDO2. Looks like it's pretty good with that right now. Um, dry air is going to be working way off to the northwest, but it's not going to be a huge concern for now. So I'm tweeting simultaneously. It's just not a live tweet, but I am tweeting simultaneously. There we go. Sorry, if you asked a question during that span, I might have missed it. It looks like it's gonna maybe try to get some hot towers going, but this is maybe the healthiest it's looked all storm. All the duration of the storm, this may be the most healthy it's looked. like looking at all the different kinds of overlay with satellite data. It's just for me it's useful. It's useful. I like the different overlays, different color schemes. For me, I like looking at the different color schemes, especially this one may be my favorite. And there's another one too that I saw earlier, someone tweet, and I couldn't remember. There's another website too that uses some really good satellite data. But man, is it taking off right now? It's taking off. We just happen to be streaming while this is happening. I mean, boy, oh boy, oh boy. Western Cuba is gonna get smacked tonight. Western Cuba is gonna get absolutely smacked tonight. This thing's trying to get towards major hurricane status before it makes landfall. The eye, see with these, I just tweeted it simultaneously. I'm talking about right now. When the eye warms, it allows for pressure to fall much more faster, much faster. When those cloud tops warm and the eye becomes drier, it allows that pressure to drop more. It makes it easier for the pressure to fall. And then we see the winds catch up or strengthen simultaneously. Because it's firing up convection. You can see here it's going to get, this right here is going to get going. This is maybe a little bit too thick. One too thick. You can see this is probably going to try to fire up this little thing right here. If you look right there, that's probably going to try to fire up. This is firing up right now. That bad boy's firing up. And then this is firing up right now too. Rotating, and even right here. All this is wrapping around because we've had this strong western eye wall already. And even then, we have some even cooler. These are near minus 90 degrees. That's wrapping around here because we've had this strong southwest base this whole storm. But now the eye's warming here. We're seeing these hot towers, these vertical hot towers that are really starting to get pumping now. We're going to get some really cool satellite imagery right before this Cuba landfall. It's interesting to think what would happen with this storm if Cuba wasn't there right now. And it's a big what if Cuba just vanished and it was just ocean. But it is an interesting what if. I guess for a lot of storms you could say that too, but just this one specifically at this moment. Because it is taking off. It is absolutely taking off right now. Now, one thing that the storm will have to improve on, again, it's trying to work. It's been working off a little bit of dry air every once in a while throughout the past, not the past few hours or so, but more like the past, 48 hours in general, even from the beginning. So what we are going to want to look for now that's starting to take off, we're going to try to look for its CDO, central dense overcast, meaning this main, I know it's hard to see that, but this main ring of convection around the center, not around the inner core, just around the center of the storm. That's called its central dense overcast, its CDO. So at this point, we're going to be looking for this to expand, and we look for the eye to be in the middle of that. In the middle of the CDO. That is where we look for the eye to be. I maybe explained that a little bit funky, but you know what I'm trying to say. When the eye is in the middle, in the CDO is symmetrical, that is when that is a more organized storm as well, a more organized major hurricane. Refresh this here. I mean, boy, oh boy, oh boy. Look at the eye warming right in here. I wonder if if the eye clears out for its first time. I'm curious if the eye is going to try to clear out for the first time. Like when I say clear out, not peek out. Peek out was what I was talking about earlier. Those finally helped it peek out a few hours ago, or a couple hours ago. Now, I'm curious if this is going to the eye completely clears out. Even if it's briefly. I wonder if it's going to completely clear out, or close to. But boy, does it look healthy right now. Western Cuba is going to take a hard hit from this one. They're going to take a hard hit. Because this is a healthy hurricane that is only intensifying. Not what you want to see if you're living on Cuba right now. I mean, this thing, luckily for the U.S., they have Cuba. Otherwise, I would be extremely curious to see how strong this was going to intensify tonight. Because it's hours away. I mean, again, this little wobble west here is important. Because if it's able to work its way like into this little notch right here, and then works this way, that would be curious. Because then it's going to be a little bit less time over land. And more time to intensify as well. More time to intensify before landfall and then try to slide off. Well, maybe it wouldn't be like that much of a shift. But it'd be something like here, like this. Something like that. Maybe if this wobble continues, when it undergoes like structural changes like this and the starting to wobble, this wobble lasts long enough and gives it more time to intensify before the center of the eye hits landfall. It could be a problem. Even like just little things, like maybe an extra 10 miles an hour or something. It's just something to think about. I mean, good God, though. This is what people, this storms like this that people should fear at least a little bit. I say that as fear as a normal average person. Hopefully you're not fearing it if you are getting impacted, because if you're prepared, I'm a firm believer that if you're prepared, you should not be worried. If you are prepared. Now, there's some things that you can be as prepared as you can be, and still there's nothing you can do about it. You had crappy luck. But at the same time, I'm a firm believer, especially with weather. This is only weather I talk about on here for like 98% of the time, but I'm a firm believer that if you're prepared, you should not be worried. You should not be worried if you're prepared. And I think that's something that a lot of people that get impacted should live by. That as long as you prepare, you should not be worried. And then once you get to the point where you're not prepared and it's a little too late at that point, well, listen, you can only help yourself at that point. No one else, you can hope. Maybe you're lucky someone will, but you can't rely on someone else to help you at that point. I mean, textbook. Again, we'd like to see the eyes centralize a little bit more and the CDO become a little bit more symmetrical. That's one thing we would look for, to see this thing take off even more, but it's never always perfect. Something can be textbook and not perfect. Textbook rapid intensification. Not the most perfect we've ever seen, though. little bit of a difference. But whoa, man. You kidding me? I mean, weather nerds, like you at some point the website's been working slow, and at some point you got to work it so that we don't have to wait 10 minutes for every update. But what I do like about weather nerds is you can see lightning, and then we do have eyewall lightning right now in that western quadrant. There is eyewall lightning currently present. It's like not as many active folks, at least in the comments of YouTube. Unless I hope I didn't disable something. I don't think I did. Nope, not there. That's not where I want to be. Man, is this storm. You know, these are the ones. These are the ones people remember. These are the ones that people remember. No doubt about that. A lot of people, and this applies more to winter storms, I would say, because they can tend to get more generalized with hurricanes, and like generally, most meteorologists, there's not a lot to debate about hurricanes. Like they're just actually happening, and they're actually happening before they hit, and it's visible what's going to happen. Whereas a snowstorm, it's not really visible the exact impacts until they actually do happen. But a lot of forecasters get defined. My point was a lot of forecasters get defined by storms like these. A little bit harder to do. A little bit harder to get defined by storms like these on the tropical side than the winter side. Reloop that, replay it. Ooh, oof. Yep. That's just convection that's wrapping around the center right now. I am live. I'm not live tweeting, but I am tweeting right now. It's hard. Like I live tweet more, but the gifs on the computer it's a little bit easier to do on the mobile device than it is on the computer. It could be a bit of a process on the computer, especially with the College of DuPage, their satellite page. All right. I mean, this is what we do. We obsess and we replay these replay these loops so fast always. Boy, this is impressive to watch unfold tonight. I'm sorry if you had a question while I was tweeting that too. You can you ask questions again. Ask questions. There hasn't been a ton of questions asked so far. YouTube people haven't asked a ton of questions. Oh, what's up? Is it Alec? Looks like I think Alec. But again, you can. I am streaming on YouTube and Twitter, so you can however you most comfortably want to watch this. You can watch on YouTube and Twitter. But I mean, we look at these ocean heat content values. You know, it's not moving over this stronger pocket right here. But again, this is way more than plenty enough for this to take off, and it's been doing that. You know, worked its way, like this. And up here, it's a little bit hard to see, but I think you can see it. And maybe it wasn't that close to Jamaica, I think, but maybe a little bit sharper. But this is ridiculously strong relative to what it needs to intensify. Some very ridiculously strong values. Ocean heat content values. How fast is it deepening pressure wise? Again, that's always a little bit hard to extrapolate for yourself, because you can guess all you want, but then you have to wait for recon. If I had to just throw a dart, I'd say it's probably sub 960 at this point. It was around 964ish, 963ish. It was 962 last advisory, but recon found it raised a couple millibars before the eye wall opened up for a second, and then it closed off, and we've seen this ridiculous strengthening happen. If I had to throw a dart, I would say it's probably getting close to sub 960 at this point, if not already. And I think they're going to have enough to classify this as a major hurricane just based on the satellite presentation. And given that they were close to 100, they found close to 110 mile per hour sustained winds on the SMFR in that last recon pass in the northeast quadrant, along with here is their last Air Force pass here. These are flight level, but their last pass, it looks like they did make a 961. I missed that. They did. They just didn't chart it. And they did find around 110. So so it's definitely sub 960 now. If that's just based on their last pass, is definitely sub 960. I mean, I want to see this. What was that last pass? I need to see that. Here we go. This was it. I mean, this is like an hour ago, too. I'm going to look like an idiot. But I forgot that it's a little late, and I kind of forgot the time. So we're going 4Z to... I look like that kind of. I always know this kind of stuff, but I look like an idiot searching this up right now. Okay. I just had to double check. I'm really good at knowing that. That can be difficult sometimes to translate when the hour changes. Sometimes it throws me off still. We're on 960, so I guess we can. Yeah, we'll live tweet. We'll live tweet this bad boy. It's about an hour ago. And the V profile too. Notice this is allowing this warming temps in the eye. It's allowing this to drop further. We have this V kind of. We look for this V, and the more it can drop down and get into the center. That's what we look for with these drop zones for intensification. I mean, I don't want to save that because it's going to save it as a GIF. Not unlikely, no. Probably will. It will play a little bit of a detriment to it. So we'll halt intensification and maybe even weaken it a little bit. But it's not going to. It's not going to like end its life or anything. It's not going to weaken it like 20 miles an hour, like 20, 30 miles an hour. It's not going to weaken it that much. Damn it. I have to screenshot. We are live. We're live tweeting. We're doing a live tweet right now. But then we don't want to go to. We want. Yep. Ooh, mama. It's fine. Nice little live tweet right now. Let's see this. See the method behind the madness here. I mean, it's improving like every frame. Something about the live tweets, it feels like you have more access than what other people do. See, like without reference and you're just watching me, you might think I'm like the slowest typer possible. But in reality, I'm just like processing what I'm trying to write. I got so many different thoughts going through my head right now when I'm typing this. In general, I'm a quick thinker, so a lot of stuff goes through my head, and I can. That's why, a lot of times, I can think of stuff quickly when people say something. I get something quick off the top of my head. So now imagine this: I'm typing something. How many different thoughts are going through my head when I'm trying to type? Just like that though. I do so many. I wish to get Twitter added more characters. Thank God, like a year or something ago. But I wish they added even more. I wish it was like 300 characters. Jesus, what the hell people tweeting about? Well, big Aurora tonight, but I don't need to see all this crap. Twitter, please, you gotta filter this out. What is this satellite? I want to see this. This looks like what I'm using, but different at the same time. Oh, light. He's got lightning on it. That's the difference. I mean, it's not like it was like awful presentation when they went through or something. Like it was definitely like strengthening, and the eye was clearing out some. But also, it looks pretty good right now. This might be this. It's like that little wobble west might have ended. Let's take a look at radar. I want to see radar. Now we haven't checked radar in a minute. Yeah, that's a closed off eye. That looks pretty healthy. We do wonder if we pull it with the other radar. It's not as high quality is the problem. But the center of it looks like it's gonna it looks like it's a little deceiving on satellite. Is it though? Looks like it's a little bit like it visually the way it looks on radar makes it feel a little bit farther west than it does on satellite for some reason. Yeah, I mean I think about where we were 50 hours from now. Last slot. I mean, 48 hours. 48 hours ago, where we were at. So, tropical depression. I mean, that day it was depression basically for most of the day. Now we're in that major hurricane right now, probably. Stuff changes fast. So 40 hours from now, how much more is this thing going to intense? That's a good, valid question. I'd say probably after it makes landfall, it's going to have about 24 hours to intensify to whatever it can become. So I think we're gonna how much we see it intensify after landfall for about that 24-hour period. I think that's about what we're gonna look for the peak. Maybe you could argue 36. You could argue 36, but more, or you could argue like 30. But eyewall replacement cycle will be something to watch for. I talked about that. Eyewall replacement cycle will be something to watch. I'm curious, did we get... No, they didn't go through northeast eyewall. So curious. I mean, the much stronger winds than that northwest eyewall they finally found, though. I mean, a little bit above the surface. As much as 115 knots, and they even found 112 knots at 950 millibars. Gotta imagine now with this storm probably in the mid 950s, or maybe even lower. Maybe not that much lower, but at least probably around the mid 950s. You gotta imagine some of these 100 knot plus winds in the northwest Iowa are now starting to mix down. When will it make landfall? I can try to give you an exact timing, but it's going to be around some point within 2 to 3 days. If it rides up the coast and then takes its time, it could make landfall a little bit farther north. But I probably around a couple days from now, like Tuesday, Thursday night, I think. Or no, wait. Yeah, I think I had that right. Wait, did I? No. Wednesday night, early Wednesday, late Wednesday night, or early Thursday morning, depending on how you view it. Around that time, I think is probably when it's going to make landfall. You can see what the H wharf did. Eye warms, clears out, and then dry air starts to get into the core. Has it bottoming out at a 9:45. We can weenie out and look at the wind speeds. Cat 4. But also, the H wharf might have even initialized a little bit weak here. Or did it? Seems like it's got a decent idea, but it's already 105 right now. Decent, possibly decent, but also not too off. Depends on how much time it takes to get going off land. That will be important. Someone asked about that earlier tonight. That will be somewhat important. No doubt about it. All the meteorologists tweeting about the satellite, all the satellite stuff. Looks like a new area for development. Looks like another area to watch for development. Just west of the, couple 100 miles west of the Cabo Verde Islands. 70% chance within the next 48 hours. I am curious where we are for ACE. So this thing has only been a hurricane for less than a day now. But I am interested in some of these statistics, just for my own personal. I am interested in some of these statistics. Statistics? Yeah, that's good. I think that's the right frame. Fiona got so strong, got down to 932. Had a borderline Cat 5 pressure, but Fiona never got its winds more than Category 4 status. Ian's only accumulated 3.8, but that will go up. That will go up for sure. Where we're at in the year, we're probably approaching 70 at this point. It's just accumulated cyclonic energy. That's all that is. My boy Colton caught the Aurora. Nice. Was that the eye? No. Okay. Man, I'm shocked how quiet it is. There's usually been more people. Yeah, I mean, last night we definitely had more people on the stream. We may end a little bit earlier than we did, just because. I mean, we're not ending at like any time, like relatively soon, but we're not like immediately soon. But maybe we end this at 2 instead of like 2:30. I mean, I get it. I'm just looking at satellite, but I want to follow satellite just as much as you do. Gravity waves are kind of cool, to be honest. I put an interesting question, I actually too, which was, do we need to redefine the metric standards for rapid intensification, and do we need to maybe upgrade that 35 mile per hour number? In other words, I think we should do 40. I think 40. I think 40 miles per hour for rapid intensification is what it should be for the number. 0 people are in the. Okay, there we. Oof. Scared me for a second. No, but my question was, do we think we should increase the rapid intensification number? Because it feels like rapid intensification happens so frequently now, like 35 miles per hour. I feel like 40 miles per hour, like 35 knots, would be a good number to measure rapid intensification. 40 miles per hour in 24 hours. I feel like that'd be much better. Just because, like, it just happens so much now. Rapid intensification happens so frequently now that it's like, someone was right. I forget who tweeted it, but it feels like every hurricane now it happens. It's like not even. Why are we considering it rapid intensification if it's like just if it's just happening with like every hurricane now that happens? I feel like rapid intensification should be used to like as a term to really set apart hurricanes from one another, from like the beasts of beasts. But now it's like just how frequently it happens. It's like it feels like it takes out the purpose of the term rapid intensification. I don't know. I feel like 40 would be a good number. Wouldn't be super controversial, and you would just reset the records. You would just redefine which storms didn't do rapid intensification based on your standards. That's really all this impacts. I don't think people are going to be up in arms over because their rapid intensification database was messed up. It messed up my database, my database for all the storms I had. I mean, man, I don't know how much more I can update this. I'm so every update. So one of those it's at that point in the storm where every frame update we get for satellite, I want to look at it. Like some pretty strong rain bands are working their way through, west central Cuba, or west central Cuba too, that are sliding up. Right, these feeder bands that are working up through here, putting some gusty squalls down. And we even have, I'm not going to pull it up, but we even do have pretty big time rain band in South Florida too, associated, probably associated with a little bit of that trough and shear out ahead, and then combine that with the tropical moisture being pumped in. We're getting some heavy rains out ahead of it. How's it doing with satellite? I mean, hell, it's it's not that impressive. Let's be real here. It's not that impressive. Pretty impressive though. It's pretty impressive though, but it's not that impressive. Looks like at 2 a.m. it says we're gonna get a little big time CB burst on the southeast quadrant. Our replacement cycle maybe. I mean, also the H dwarf also has it's a weaker scenario. It also has a landfall. I mean, in freaking way north of where the rest of guidance suggests. Maybe not way north, but a good amount north than where I think landfall is going to be. Honestly, where I think this makes landfall, my gut says south of Tampa. My gut says somewhere in here. Slide off. It's a little bit more connected to that trough. Models have been possibly underestimating the depth of that trough, the strength of that trough, and it's going to feel a little bit more influence. It's going to slow down some, but a little bit faster than that 18-0, maybe not like that, but something like this. Slides back off into the ocean, comes up, or maybe not even into the ocean, but slides up barely into the ocean and back up here. I think we see something like that. Or even if it's here, it's like this. Or something along those lines. Now, that's just my opinion. What is on the table too is something comes up to here, Tampa, it sits along the coast, and then like makes landfall eventually and slides through, and maybe comes out here or slides up this way. I think those are your the two most realistic scenarios on the table, and I'm still going to go with the first one. Again, I always follow up when I do that stuff. I think, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But that's just my 2 cents. I mean, that convective burst on the southwest side is pretty impressive. Very impressive. At this point, the eye wall is pretty close to getting on Cuba, on the south. That's on the south shore of Cuba at this point. In the next uh, couple hours, in the next 2-3 hours. Oh, has it? Oh, hello there. YouTube usually the later crowd. I just discussed a little bit of stuff. It's possible it gets back out into the Atlantic and strengthens. It's possible. Take a little. It would take a little bit, if I'm being honest, but it is possible. In South Carolina should evacuate? No, your friends in South Carolina shouldn't evacuate. I don't even know where in South Carolina you were talking. I'm assuming along the coast, but no, your friends in South Carolina should not evacuate. They shouldn't evacuate for flooding, unless it was. Let me rephrase that. They shouldn't evacuate for flooding on the scale that they'll probably see. They can get some strong winds. South Carolina will have a chance to get some strong winds, and maybe it does get back in the Atlantic, and then becomes a strong strengthens, and then you have to worry about wind and surge a little bit again. But No, I just told you, your friends in South Carolina should not be evacuating. This is not. It's not going to be that much of a problem at that point. Could be a problem. Definitely could significant problem. But I mean, usually evacuations are for storm surge when storm surge is so impactful. But man, on satellite, does this look good? I mean, this convective burst on the south side really holding its ground. This eye wall over here has been really holding really this whole time, but now we've gotten the boom, these rings of convection just firing up around this side. This was the one that really got me. Okay, here we go. Mac is a little bit my MacBook's a little bit angry right now, so that's the possible loud noise you're hearing. Oh, undo that because when we're streaming while using the Mac, I mean, we just burned. I've charged it to 100 and it's burned 71% in less than 2 hours. So it gets a little bit angry, but you can see the eye warming. I mean, just very impressive overall. These near minus 90 degree cloud tops. You notice the banding organization, the banding fire up from here too. This is a little bit probably induced with land. This is probably some land interaction, but still. Has expanded convection to the west as well, which will help it fight dry air, but convection's been pretty shallow on this western side the whole storm. And that's where it's going to be fighting dry air. The Euro 0Z hasn't came out yet. The 0Z Euro has not come out yet. There's a good chance it's a Cat 3 right now. There's a good chance. I mean, they found a 960 millibar. We were talking about earlier. They found a 960 millibar pressure. And that was almost 2 hours ago at this point. Almost 2 hours ago. They found a 960 millibar pressure. And that's what satellite looked like in the beginning of this loop. You know, compare that. When was this? Even earlier. That's what it looked. This is what satellite looked like when they hopped in. We started to see that ring of. This was even a little bit before that. Those hot towers popped off. The eye warned. So I gotta imagine mid low 950s right now, somewhere in that range, low to mid 950s. I'd lean mid 950s just to be conservative, but real rapid strengthening tonight from Ian for sure. Yeah, it looks like more of that eye continuing to warm as well too. curious what this southwest burst to on the southwest side of the core. How much can these gravity waves expand out to the west and also help this storm with its shallower convection on this side? No, there. The NAM, the NAM's never correct. Don't use the NAM. Don't use the NAM. Never use the NAM. I'm sure you guys didn't even know that, but don't ever use the NAM for tropical. We talked about this a little while ago on streams. No, the NAM is not really good for short range. It's don't ever use the NAM. You want me to explain to you why you shouldn't use the NAM? Because I know some of y'all are still learning, because a lot of my YouTube folks in there haven't really seen a lot of the Twitter stuff, or involved in it. Bro, I showed you the 18Z. It's just so the 890 millibars is just so unrealistic. We're not going to see 890 millibars. I don't even have to go any further than that. I think that's just so ridiculously unrealistic. Don't use the NAM for short range, and not for hurricanes, not for tropical systems. It does not. The physics in the model are not supportive for that. Not supportive for that. It's okay if you don't know, you don't know. It's again not. It's good for short range for winter systems. I mean, and even at that point, it's still not great. I mean, damn, this thing, Mac is just burning battery at this point, and it is loud. I mean, you can hear that. The fan in my Mac is just below the undercarriage is hot right now. I mean, it's not just my word. You can take anybody who knows a lick about weather. They know that. Anybody that knows a good amount about the models and weather, they know that the NAM is not good for tropical cyclones. That doesn't take a lot. You just got to be exposed. But we did get our 2 a.m. advisory, so I'm wondering if they went major. They did not. There's no way this thing is only dropped. I find it so hard to believe this thing has only dropped 2 millibars. I get you have to be conservative, but there's no way this thing has only dropped 2 millibars based on the stuff we've seen. 110, I get the 110, but that was understandable. But only 958 millibars? There's no way. It was 960 millibars. It was 960 millibars right around there. This is what it looked like at around 960 millibars. You're telling me all this has happened in the last 2 hours and it's only 2 millibars stronger? And especially with the intensity estimates you've done throughout the day, only 2 millibars stronger from the last pass recon went in. I don't buy that. I don't buy that one bit. Not one bit do I buy that. You don't want to use the name millibars. Millibars is how we measure pressure. We measure pressure in mercury. So how the atmosphere works. Just get this ugly name off my screen. It's less ugly in the wintertime. No, we don't want any of the names. I mean, we don't really need even this because I'm just going to draw on the screen, but I'm just trying to get something that's makes me feel smarter. So how the atmosphere works is this is the top of our atmosphere, right? So imagine we'll get the thicker one out and we'll go blue. So this is the top of our atmosphere, right? But this is the surface of our atmosphere. This is where we live. It's not quite straight. And in between here are all these, in between here are all a bunch of millibars from 0 at the top to 1,000 millibars at the surface. Usually 1,000 is like a low pressure system, but 1,000 is like the closest, like rounded. And this is, like 100 millibars. This is like 250. And this is, 500. Millibars. That's what we look at a lot of those Vort maps. And then, that down here all the way we have 850. And in between that is 700. And this would be like 925, imagine. So we measure the atmosphere, the height of the atmosphere in millibars. So when pressure falls, the stronger pressure from higher up in the atmosphere, pressure literally falls. That's why we say the pressure is dropping, because it's literally dropping in the atmosphere. Pressure is falling. Higher pressure, like technically stronger, I should say stronger. Lower pressure from the atmosphere is getting down to the surface. So the surface pressure is strengthening because the pressure is dropping. So it's obviously not 850. 850 would be like a record for storms. I think the record's like 860 something or 872 or something like that. I think that's the record for intensity. And I think Wilma's up there with some of those stuff. But when you hear millibars, that's what it means. How do planes fly into hurricanes? No, they don't use boats for recon. That would be tragic. That would be not good. That would be rest in peace to the boat. I mean, we just went over the NAM, the model physics in the NAM. You got to get away from the NAM. I'm not trying to like make you feel bad or something, but I just want to make it clear, like the NAM should not be used for tropical systems. It's not designed. The model physics are not designed to. It's much better with mid latitude, east coast cyclogenesis is where the NAM shines. It's also used for severe weather too, but it is not good for tropical cyclones. but the planes fly into hurricanes. They're jets, they're military jets that are designed to military or government jets that are designed to fly in. They go in, they get the data. It's a little bit of a bumpy ride, but again, they're not flying through the strongest surface of the winds. They drop down stuff. They'll fly through some strong winds for sure, some of those flight level, but it's not like they're landing the plane at the surface when they're trying to do this in these strong winds. They're not landing the plane in that stuff. They're just flying through it. Yeah, I know, John. Well, I mean, they're not flying like at the surface. The hurricane hunters are not. They're not like landing the plane at the surface. What they do is when I show you the recon, they get the pressure. They literally they drop weather instrument. They drop it down into the center of the storm, so they don't have to go down there. They drop it down, reads the pressure, then they bring it back up, and they get the information. That's how we get all this pressure data, the strength of the storm. We get all this data thanks to them, and we get a new recon plane flying in. We will not be awake for when it does, but we do have a new plane going in. I'm curious what made them go with 110 958. The 110 less, but the pressure to me, yeah, I could understand them not having enough to go major, but it just says the estimated pressure is 958. They didn't really explain. Just a little frustrating. Yeah, I was hoping they would provide more, but whatever. They're not designed to be exactly perfect with estimates, but it's too bad. Wish we could have had recon go through when the storm was really taking off. Like, wish we could have had recon go in like a half hour ago or something. Because I'm not sure this flight is going to make it in time before it landfalls in Cuba. But we will get, assuming there's some people, some weather stations recording data on Cuba. Hopefully, we'll be able to get some pressure readings. There's probably less than you would have like in the U.S. landfall, but hopefully, we'll be able to get some pressure readings from stations on the island of Cuba. I mean, I say the island, but it's a massive island, obviously, big island. But in this western part here, where it makes landfall, hopefully, we can get some pressure readings. We'll get some confirmed observations too with wind gusts. Curious what radar has. Here's the Cuban radar too. They have different radar sites throughout the island, and right now I think we're on the either far west or we're on the island right here. We're on one of those two, I forget. Yeah, Iowa closed off. It's closed off. Small eye. So there will be the small eye will get probably worked a little bit as it moves over the elevation. There's a little bit of elevation that's going to have to move over. Not like mountain ranges, but it is going to have to work over some. A little bit of elevation, which will try to disrupt the course some. So it could take a few hours, maybe even up to 6 hours, or even a little bit longer, I guess you could suppose, after landfall. It probably won't take 6 hours, my guess, but it could. It's possible. But at least probably a few hours before, after, not before, but after it reemerges into the Gulf of Mexico. And then from that point on, it will intensify until it either gets sheared or landfall. One of the two, or both, at the same time. Well, interesting you bring that up. They do hurricane recon. They do sometimes go out and they get the environment for the storm. There was no snowstorm last year, 928 millibars. Not in the lower 48 of the U.S. There was not a 928 millibar snowstorm. There wasn't even a 928 millibar hurricane that hit the U.S. last year. That's that strong. So, but they do send upper air missions out, and then they measure the some of those. They measure some of the data in the environment, and they get sent out, and they're able to get input into the models, and then we use that to help with the forecasts. Even though, because mid-latitude cyclones are different from surface. Well, I live in Massachusetts, so I kind of have to say snow. Snow is how I got into weather. When I was a kid, when I was younger. That's how I got into it. You don't get a lot of hurricanes. Storms like Irene and Sandy get you definitely more intrigued, and those are the ones you can talk about. But other than that, we tracked Henri last year to no avail for anywhere other than the southern Rhode Island coast, basically. There were some flooding, but it wasn't like end of the world flooding. It was just, like 3 to 5 inches of rain for 3 to 6 inches, I guess, like 3 to 6 inches of rain for a lot of the region. So it wasn't too bad. Actually, I'm worried the computer's going to die. It's been 2 hours and it's drained almost 90%. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get my charger that's like 5 feet away from me. There we go. Yep, all good. It's the most snow I've ever gotten. 30, almost 33 inches. 2015, January, late January storm. The blizzard of 2015. that whole winter. I can talk about I went into a lot of the upper air stuff, so remember all the different parts of the atmosphere I was talking to you about. This is 500 millibars vorticity, and here it's visible. We have this trough. We have this trough right here. This big dip in the jet stream. I didn't mean to do it like that. 2015, great winter. But we have this big dip in the trough here, and this is our storm. Not Fiona, Ian. Ian is the new name, and we have Ian right here. Obviously it's feeling at this point. It's feeling a little bit, but the outflow is still supportive. But it's feeling it's a little bit of this. This convection is kind of getting displaced throughout because we have the front, right here, probably somewhere around here-ish. I don't know, maybe a little bit farther south. So dry air is kind of pushing this way. Moist tropical air pushing this way, creating this little boundary in this front. And that's why you're seeing convection all along here. But in order for this to ride up the East Coast, we would need to see this trough slow down and strengthen. So we need to see this dip a little bit farther. Excuse me. A little bit farther deeper. If that makes sense, a little bit deeper. So we can see a stream interaction. Because once a stream interaction basically is the storm becomes linked up and connected with the trough. So when it becomes connected, then it starts being influenced. The movement of the storm starts being influenced a lot more by this trough directly and less of the steering currents of where the high pressure is set up. The trough creates a weakness in the ridge, and then it can create a weakness in the ridge to a point where we see a stream interaction with the trough, and then it kind of pinwheels around the trough. And we'll have to go back. Let's go back to a scenario that showed that, and this was like the Euro from way long ago. It's probably this 12Z run Friday. Yeah, this is it. Notice how much farther south it is, though. And notice how much the depth in the trough has changed at this point. See, that's the new run from 12Z, 12 hours ago. And then here's that Friday run. Oh no, that is Friday. Here's Monday. Notice how it's sliding out quicker and it's not as deep. This trough sitting back much longer allows for the stream interaction with the storm. We want to go drop a little bit lower. And then what happens is, if I play this out, you see it come. I see how this is pulling in. This kind of like fades a little bit, shrinks in almost, it looks like, but it's really just we're seeing the stream interaction. This gets pulled closer to the trough. The trough is pulling it in almost, vice versa. And notice it gets pulled up the coast, and we see it just become one big mid-latitude cyclone. I mean, it's not really that strong at this point, but just a big upper level low at that point, as it's making that extra tropical transition. But as it makes that extra tropical transition, it's allowing it to stay stronger for longer and pull up the East Coast. That's basically how you would get this in the pull up the East Coast. It's going to take a lot for that to happen. We need to see this trough would really have to be underestimated and dig down. I mean, we've seen changes before, but I mean, we need to see some pretty significant changes, or maybe it's just not analyzing the current environment correctly at all. Just possible, but um, I mean, I don't know. It's hard hoping for stuff to happen because people get affected by this. You have to remember, there's more people than just yourself. Even if you can manage the storm, and for what it may be interesting to see for um, what it may be interesting to see for yourself. Is that worth other people's lives being at risk? Flooding impacts, strong wind, power outages, is all that worth it? For you to get your satisfaction of seeing the storm. So you have to put that into consideration as well. And maybe it is, and maybe you're a little bit more of a selfish person, but if that's what it means for you. But oh lordy, lord, we got a new hot tower firing up. This part's getting going even more. We want to shrink this. We want a little bit smaller. This this one's getting going a little bit more. If I point to it, you can see this one right here. But this one on the southeast, now east quadrant, is starting to get going here now. We got new hot towers pumping. And even if it did go up the east coast, it wouldn't be like as bad as Florida's going to get it. But there's still impacts. There's still impacts. Even regardless, there's probably going to be the remnants are going to work its way up the east coast at some point, and would probably be some heavy rainfall. But wind impacts can go up, and surge can go up if it gets back out into the Atlantic and then hits, South Carolina or North Carolina. So we don't want major, but I do think something like that, not like what I showed went through with like the old Euro, but something where it gets back into the Atlantic, maybe strengthens 5-10 miles per hour, and then makes another landfall. That could be possible. I mean, they're in the eastern part. What hot towers are called convective hot towers. If you weren't sure, it's just convective bursts that are firing, and hot towers is just a term we use to describe them because just towers of convection. Yeah, I mean, these these are not. This is just convection. These are just outer bands. Hot towers are what rotate around the inner core of the storm. That's what we look for. These are just convective flare-ups in the outer banding. Now you can see that on radar. There's a difference between the inner core, like the center of the system, firing up convection like manually by itself, and this is just the surrounding outer bands. These are not hot towers. These are just feeder bands pumping heavy rainfall. Maybe a risk for some tornadoes, possibly, or just strong gusty winds. So if someone dropped a question while I was making that last tweet, I'm sorry I missed it. Probably not, but yeah, man, we gotta change it. Too many people on YouTube, not to their fault, just they don't have the access that a lot of people on Twitter have to a lot of this information. There's not enough good people on YouTube that don't clickbait and actually do good analysis. And a lot of times, maybe there's sometimes just like local TV meteorologist breakdowns. And there's a lot more people I think we can reach. It's just really difficult to on YouTube. Hopefully we can change that and get people interested more in the science behind how a lot of the stuff works, because it's really interesting, or at least it is to me and and the people that follow Twitter. Obviously, that's why I have so many of those people, because that's what they look for. But I'm hoping this can be the beginning of a revolution on YouTube, where we can get a lot of people to understand what's actually happening and how they can prepare. Because believe it or not, we can even save lives with how people take this information in and not get fear mongered and hyped, and then make better decisions and alert family to make better decisions. Louisiana, yeah, Louisiana. This was never a Louisiana storm. This was never a Louisiana storm. You can really see that convection firing up around that southeast east quadrant right here, right? Boom, this wrapping right around here, and now we're starting to see. Yep, look for it too on this northwest quad. Anything in the northeast popping? No. But it is rapidly rotating. We may see this eye, like it's cleared out right now, but like we may see this really clear out, like really, really clear out. Because the eye is still, anywhere from, around minus, minus, minus the eye is still anywhere from around -10 to -45 degrees Celsius right now. Still some relatively, it's like it's warmed, but there's still some relatively cool cloud tops in the eye. We could see this thing really clear out with this convective burst working around. One thing I would like to see, not like want to happen, but would like to see for this storm to get a little bit better organized as well, is the CDO expand this way out a little bit more on its northwest quad, and just have this convection, give it a little bit more, space to work out this dryer. It looks like it is expanding right here. It needs some convection to fire up, get some more minus 60-degree cloud tops to expand farther west. That's one thing I would look for the storm to be a little bit healthier. But this is all kind of going to be a mute point. Moot? Oh Lord. It's not going to matter once it makes landfall structural wise, because it's going to undergo pretty significant structural changes. So. Yeah, I don't really, and the thing is, I'm sure you've noticed, a lot of the YouTubers, the first thing they do in their videos is make sure you like and subscribe. And I don't, I don't know if you've noticed that. I'm not trying to give myself a pat and bet or anything, but I don't think you've heard me say that once, in any of these streams. It's because it's not really. I'm glad for the people that do like it, because it does help people that like it. It does help get in the YouTube algorithm, and that does help. It does help, but at the same time, I just enjoy doing this. So, and I'm streaming on Twitter to get a lot of my Twitter followers, and then they'll go out later. But a lot of the YouTube folks, they come in a little bit later, and then they stay for a little bit longer. So I'm appreciative of the people that come in here. Even if I have to lay the groundwork out a little bit in terms of the analysis, I don't mind doing that, because I can retrace some of my steps of explaining what's happening. Because everyone's at different learning levels, different points of what they understand, and it's not really their fault. They only know what they know. You can't just add knowledge. It's like the Flash, like when, I don't know if anybody's watched the Flash before, but when DeVoe gets the brain thing and he just gets all this, steals information from people and tries to become the smartest person on the earth. We don't have any access like that. We can't just plug in a device into our brain and then make it become magical. You have to learn naturally. You have to learn through mistakes. You have to learn through life. It's just how the human brain works. This boy, is this impressive. Boy, is this impressive. What's up, E? Yeah, but this thing is it's a pretty beastly looking on satellite now. This is a good another scenario of a storm rapidly having these rapidly rotating convective bursts around the core, and notice the convection out here is waning because it's centering, honing into the center, shedding all this excess convection. Doesn't doesn't need. It's not important, and centering in on these rotating convective bursts around the inner core. No, I'm not banning anybody. Don't need to do that. This man, he just really likes hurricanes. Why can't it's maybe a little over the top, but he just likes hurricanes or wants attention, one or the other. Curious, we got any eye wall lightning popping right now too? Yep, on the southwest side. All right, Euros come out some at this point. Man. Oh boy. Look, you can already see the strength of this drop. Notice how the center of the height charts, the strongest part, the center of these height charts, it gets shifted farther west and deeper. And then you can see the 558 height lines. You can see these dip farther southwest too. This is going to be, this is going to mess with things, isn't it? This is definitely going to mess with things. It's not the stall that it was last time, though. I mean, though, at the same time, these are 24-hour leaps. I mean, in 24 hours, it only goes that far. So, in 48 hours, it only goes that far. I mean, how's that compared? It's getting pulled further east. Closer and closer. I mean, 850. Get a little bit hard, but Euro's trying to make things interesting. I mean, even though it's still pulling. It's still getting pulled north. I mean, look how damn close this is to. I mean, the Keys in the southwest coast here of Florida. This is really close. And that does not look a good scenario for Tampa. I mean, even then, I'd say this probably aims just a little bit south of Tampa. Yeah, that's what I was just saying. It's close. That's close. I mean, it's kind of starting to line. I mean, I told you where I think this thing's making. If I put a gun to my head, I think somewhere in here. Maybe just to be safe. That's a little bit too much room for a margin. Somewhere around there. Just north of Tampa, all the way down to like Naples almost, is where I think this thing makes landfall. If it can get pulled out, if this can get pulled out to sea and be able to strengthen 5-10 miles per hour, that would be relatively interesting. I will say that would be relatively interesting. Oh, here we go. Really starting to fire up on that north. Now I was talking about waiting for that north, the north quad for that inner ring of convection to start firing out. There we go. I mean, it looks like that eye wall is now it's now on the Cuban coast. Just about. Windy? Do I ever use the website Windy? Yeah, I use. Um, I mean, kind of just for like if I want to weenie out. My comments froze. Are there that many going at a time or something? Or like people still commenting? I'm just not seeing it. Yeah, well, it is people. That's interesting. I don't know. I don't know what happened. Looks like they froze. Oh, they did issue a special update? Okay. It looks like they upgraded to major hurt. I wasn't expecting it. They usually don't do special advisories for just without recon. So that's interesting. Interesting. I don't know. I don't know how to fix this, but I'll just look at you. I'll go directly to the YouTube. It's okay. It's easy. The format's much easier to see with the on the stream, but you get a live tweet from me. see what people have to say about it. That's an amazing aurora. I mean, Recon doesn't show it, but yeah, satellite freaking does. Still not. Looks like we're having a problem here. All right. Well, we gave you a chance. So we'll put him on timeout because he was spamming the chat a little bit much. If he does again, then we'll just hide him. I don't want to block the user because there's still content. Maybe he's just messing around. Or he just really likes hurricanes. Maybe he just really, really likes hurricanes. I miss YouTube. Yeah, that's YouTube. That's just YouTube. That guy. That happens so much in those YouTube comments. Just people feeling invincible. So that's why Twitter really it's not really you're putting yourself out there. Twitter's a little bit more personal, and that's why I tend to keep it more general. It's easier to get personal when someone doesn't know who you are. Then you feel like you can say what. Yeah, we're gonna stream tomorrow. We're gonna stream tomorrow night as well. At least I think so, unless something comes up. But we should be able to stream for tomorrow. See, I'll answer any last questions. I probably need to call it a night too, really soon. Then I gotta update like the description for the YouTube video after, and then I gotta go to bed. Yep. Have a good night, John. Any last questions, YouTube? Any last questions you got that aren't about banging hurricanes? You guys good? All right then. I don't know what happened, why the chat froze over here, but I'm glad you guys enjoy the stream. If you happen to like this, that's awesome. And can get and literally like it, figuratively like it. Both good. If it helps the algorithm, and ultimately it's not about getting numbers. It's just more interactions and more people that we can get this content out to. It's it's not really, it's not even just about about content. Like, it's literally what is in the content. So just trying to inform people, trying to get more actual real analysis, and not just those bright flashy thumbnails. I'm sure that possibly led some of you to searching for weather stuff on YouTube or coming back. I advise you, the people that put those thumbnails out with all that flashy stuff, I would stay away from them, because they're probably just hyping stuff up. So I think you want to try to find people who don't hype that stuff up. And I'm not one of those people who are gonna hype it up. If for those who have been here for a lot of the stream, it's in depth analysis. Some stuff you don't even really understand, that do my best to try to break down too, that I didn't understand at one point either. I think it's a good reminder, and how I understood it, just as a person, and not really through like meteorology classes and stuff. I think that helps me make it easier to understand for other people, like I do here having in the chat right now. But yeah, Ian has intensified into a major hurricane. It'll be the first major hurricane to be in the Gulf this year. First hurricane to be in the Gulf. But first major hurricane as well. First hurricane and major hurricane to be in the Gulf. And we'll emerge in the Gulf tomorrow morning. We'll probably halt. Intensification will be halted. Probably around 4ish a.m. when it makes landfall. And then we'll probably get back going. It'll probably get back going over land around 8 or 9 a.m., I would have to guess. And then we'll probably see intensification resume tomorrow afternoon, if not sooner. So that's basically it. Yeah, I hope you'll have a good night and stay safe. Alert the people that need to, your friends, family maybe, and peace out.